Hey, Alex.
Yes, sir.
I bet you didn't think I was going to be able to fit an anti-ice tirade into our polyamory podcast.
You know what? I never doubted you for a second.
Welcome to Mistakes Were Made, a podcast about non-monogamy for messy people like us. I'm Sarah. I'm a queer therapist, parent, writer, and activist.
And I'm her husband and co-host, Alex. I'm masculine. People say I'm masculine.
Say it with confidence and authority. Be assertive about it.
I'm masculine.
I've heard that I'm masculine.
But in a cute way.
And I'm Jessica here producing. I'm currently wearing my dad's old sweater, which I've heard referred to as grandpa core.
Oh, yeah, that is grandpa core. I love it.
Thanks.
Yeah, thrift shop.
Okay, before we get into this episode, we do want to talk a little bit about an event we have coming up on March 21st.
It's coming right up.
Coming right up. It's our intentional non-monogamy workshop. And the early bird ends March 1st.
I want to call it a retreat.
Retreat.
Yeah, because,
Yeah.
you know, we're going to retreat from bullshit and excavate internal bullshit.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not a retreat. It's going to be cozy, and there's going to be food. So
There will be
that's like-
coziness, there will be food, there will be tea, there will be, if I know you and I, there will be candles.
First 5 people who arrive will get a blanket to put on their lap.
We can promise you queer lighting. The
Yes.
lighting will be queer friendly.
Straight people are welcome too, but the lighting will be clear.
But leave your lighting at home.
Okay, but talk about what's going to happen because, you know, like, what are we actually going to do at this? Because, you know, it's not cheap. So I wanted to just like help people think about like, what can you get out of this? Is this like essentially like a poly couples, not necessarily couples, but like a polytherapy group session, which is like a thing sometimes people would do over the course of like several weeks or months of like meetings with a group, but we're kind of going to compress it all into one day for convenience.
Yeah, and thanks for letting me talk a little bit about the pricing model. So for those of us who go to individual therapy, you know that an hour of individual therapy costs anywhere between $100 and $5,000.
Yes, nobody's getting for $100 anymore.
No.
Not in Seattle.
And then if you do group, sometimes people do group as a way to get more therapy for less money, essentially. And so like a kind of typical pricing out for a group would be that, you know, you meet for an hour, but each participant is paying between $35 to $65 for that hour. But they're getting much more therapy, but in a setting with other people. What we're doing...
Which can be helpful sometimes, right?
Which can be helpful sometimes, yeah, in a kind of like affinity grouping way. And so what we're doing here is if a typical group might span 6 weeks and you would meet for an hour over the course of 6 weeks and you would pay, you know, $300, $400 for that. We're condensing it into one day. So you're getting those 6 hours all together in one day. And that's where the pricing model comes from. And that's why it's a good deal for folks who really want to invest in having a kind of like therapeutic and I think like collective grounding for the way they're opening up their relationships and thinking about non-monogamy and polyamory.
Yeah.
And so a little bit about like what might we do in those 6 hours other than be cozy in good lighting, drinking tea and looking at candles.
Which would be worse than price of admission.
Seriously.
Honestly.
We're going to build a foundation of kind of common mental health concepts related to non-monogamy. So some of those you've heard on this show. We've talked about nonlinear personal development. Like, what is it like to go back for younger versions of yourself and explore through non-monogamy? Attachment style and attachment wounding. How do you know what your attachment style is? What does that mean? What does it look like in different relationships? And what kind of wounding or attachment wounding might come up in multiple relationships? We'll talk about growth, edge, and window of tolerance. So, you know, having a kind of exercise around what's the difference between being uncomfortable in a way that is helping you grow and being distressed or dysregulated in a way that is shutting you down. We'll talk about self-soothing and co-regulation and systems thinking for relationships. So the idea that a relationship is a system, and the more relationships that you have, the more complex the system you're in. So nerd shit. We're gonna do some nerd shit.
But once you do that shit, then you get to appear cool out in the world with your like better regulation and your functional poly systems, right? Doesn't that seem
cool?
And your sunglasses.
I'm going to go ahead and say this. I think polyamory has been working on a rebrand. It's like maybe more on trend since we started.
Since we started this.
Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like it's never going to be cool. And I think that's part of why I like it.
Yeah.
Is it's just kind of stubbornly nerdy to be poly.
Yeah.
And I'm into it.
Nerdy. So in terms of like the goals for people coming to this, it's like kind of like people who are looking to identify what their individual hopes are for polyamory, and then the work will be like exploring how to build relationships and relationship agreements about that to like make those goals a reality in a hopefully like less mistake-ridden and painful,
right,
emotionally difficult way, right?
So there's the other way you could do this is the way I did it, where I was like, what's a polyamory? Oh, do you do that by going on the internet? Oh, do you then go on dates with people you meet on the internet and just see what happens?
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Okay.
Over the span of a week.
Yeah.
And I've been picking up the pieces ever since. Or you could come hang out with us and think about why you want to do it and build some language around it internally. And
is it just like us talking to the people and telling them what's what, or are there some more dynamic elements as well planned there?
That feels like a leading question.
Leading question. Is it going to be just you asking leading questions, or?
No, we are going to break into affinity groups. We're going to have exercises. I'm really excited about breaking into affinity groups based around kind of like challenges or fears that people might have, and having the opportunity to talk to each other about those. And I have like a fun exercise that I'm developing around how to communicate and grow through a mistake.
Nice. Okay. And I wanted to say maybe related to some of the content of episodes this season, we'll also probably be thinking a lot about like gender affinity, and ideally we'll have some multitudinal gender representation in this, aka I hope some men come.
Yeah, that's a good segue into today's topic.
I'm really excited for that, and to like hold some space for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I hope to see some of y'all there, because I think it's going to be a good time, actually.
I'm very excited for it.
Me too.
So today we're talking about masculinity.
Aren't we always?
Again, more. We touched on this a little bit last week, I think, or a lot bit. But I don't know. I feel like recently there's been some sort of new conversations that we've been having around this. Obviously, it's like something that, as a man, I'm thinking about a lot. Maybe that isn't obvious. Maybe men don't think about masculinity all that much, actually. But it's been showing up like out in the world and in some of our conversations recently. So, yeah, Sarah, say more about that.
One of the things that got us discussing this is what's happening in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. And right as I was about to write something on Instagram about where are the white men, I started noticing that, in fact, there were a lot of white men showing up in the community defense space there. This was after Renee Good's and before Alex Preddy's murder. When Renee Good was, essentially executed, I really had this come up in me in a strong way, where I'm like, hey, where are all of these like protector men, all of these men that, will pay lip service to this idea that they want to protect family, neighborhood, women, and suddenly they're not here, right? And then there was like videos circulating of some of these like Midwestern dads who were, hanging out on street corners with the family gun, being like, yep, I'm trained to have this. This is open carry. They were like not aggressive. They weren't shouting. They were really friendly, but they're like, yep, just here to make sure that no one comes in and hurts any of my neighbors. And we started seeing more of that. And there was a little bit more discussion around like ethical engagement and violence and, men as protectors. And then Alex Preddy was murdered.
And murdered in the midst of, an act of protection. Like he's literally trying to shield women from getting physically attacked by ICE. And then he's also carrying a gun. And then like the ICE agents turn on him and tackle him and shoot him in the back.
Exactly. And of course, it's then revealed that he's a nurse. And so in a sort of caring profession that is often female dominated. And so I think that got a lot of folks, I think one of the reasons why people were so moved by him, and I think we would all be moved by anyone standing up against ICE right now and risking their safety and their life for it. But I think as an archetype, he was really impactful because he was in this protector role. He wasn't afraid to engage with this kind of toxic masculinity in an effort to protect.
Right. And I guess it's worth noting also that the ICE agents are the toxic masculine archetype, like to the nth degree.
Almost cartoonishly.
There are no women. I hadn't even thought about this until this moment. There's no female ICE agents.
There are.
Okay.
There definitely are. I've definitely seen some. It doesn't seem
Very
like
few.
a lot, but I mean, I've seen some commentary
when
about
you
that.
conjure an ICE agent in your head, it is 25 to 35-year-old man with tactical gear and fucking Ray-Bans, and he's a fragile dipshit who was drunk on his own power and washed out of any other, possible job where he could exercise.
He's basically like drinking a giant fountain soda that just says toxic masculinity on the front of it.
Yeah. So like noting that as a thing that we really have available, right?
So, this is a lot to hang on Alex Preddy alone. So I started thinking about this more broadly. And like, where are we seeing more masculine archetypes of people, men, cis men, showing up in public spaces? And like, not always white, but I do think it is interesting to identify the race element here, showing up in public spaces or the public imagination with this kind of like protector role, in not afraid to engage with the toxic masculinity, but also not insisting on a leadership position.
Okay. Yeah.
So some of the other things that came up for me was Benicio del Toro in One Battle After Another, one of my favorite movies of the entire year. But if you all remember, he kind of shows up as this like protector, patriarch, helping a Latino community in an underground like railroad situation. And he's kind of like funny and even a little bit feminine at times. He like definitely has a gun, but he doesn't like engage in your sort of like typical toxic, violent, aggressive masculinity.
Yeah, he like dances.
He dances.
Yeah, and he takes care of people.
And he's taking care of people. And he's like kind of gentle, but also not retreating from the call. Are there any other examples that you all can think
I was
of?
just thinking about Mamdani. Like, I was thinking like, oh, a lot of the like progressive leaders that have emerged like are women, Ilhan and Katie Wilson here in Seattle. But yeah, Mamdani is a man.
Yeah.
Mamdani's a wife guy.
he's a wife guy. He loves cats.
And justice.
And justice.
And caring for the people of New York. Apparently.
And caring for the people of New York and being willing to kind of like stand up to bullies in a serious way. And take some hits as a result.
Yeah. So I would put him in that category. And we were talking about like some of the music stuff that this is almost certainly in our little weird niche, but like, Bruce Springsteen released a song about like Minneapolis. And then I think a couple of days before that, Billy Bragg, who's like a sort of like leftist folk musician hero from the UK, released a different, better song.
Yes.
A couple of days before. But there are these like elder men who are, and we just watched this Bruce Springsteen movie that's been out for a while, but like it dug into a lot of this too, like him like in navigating his mental health challenges and coming to terms with like his toxic, abusive father, you know, mentally unwell father, and like basically figuring out how to like not die because of that.
From the trauma of being raised in a toxic masculine milieu.
And now he's like is something of a leader in that sense.
Yeah, and just like they both turned out those like anti-ICE ballads in 24 hours essentially. And so I think I like it too because there's something like not too precious about it. The fact that the songs themselves might be mid doesn't really matter because they're just like, we are elder men and we want to make sure that we come out, you know, in a strong way against this type of violence.
Yeah. Not going to just wait.
Right.
To show up.
Doesn't need to be perfect.
Yeah.
Right. Which I think is also kind of an interesting exploration of dismantling the archetypes. Oh, and Pedro Pascal. Right. In like everything he does. The reason why people are obsessed with Pedro Pascal is because of this, is because he kind of represents a different type of masculine archetype.
Yeah. He's like sensitive. He's like known to be kind of sensitive and vulnerable, like as a person. Like there's all those memes of him like being nervous at the press shoot or whatever, and like co-regulating with his fellow stars. I'm not sure about that one, but
he's also really like protective, and he's come out strongly for trans rights, for example. And so I think like that kind of mixture of, there's like a loosening around what it means to be a man, a middle-aged man, an older man in that role. He also identifies as like a punk anarchist, or he was when he was younger. So I think that's interesting too.
Yeah, that is interesting. Oscar Isaac was kind of like that too. He was in ska bands.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so yeah, there are these like new models of masculinity is kind of what you're saying, that maybe we like a little bit better than the old ones, or a lot bit better.
And like heated rivalry, we were just talking about that last time, you know, so like that also is up in the mix here as we're talking about like new archetypes of masculinity. And
and in the end of that show, I feel like it works out to the Ilya character being, you know, like, especially in the last episode, he like acts as this sort of protector and like caregiver as his partner like navigate something hard. Yeah, I think that's a great example.
Exactly. And I think that for me, the scene where Ilya is helping his partner through a panic attack, you know, is particularly profound in that way.
Totally.
And we're back.
Yeah. Okay. I want to take a step backwards because I feel like we kind of dove right into like defining the thing that was different without defining the way that things were before very well. And so I would like to present to you a modern history of masculinity in 16 parts.
Wow.
The Ken Burns shows. No, I don't.
Everybody turn up the volume.
I guess I just am aware of so there's this like traditional masculine archetype in America around like whatever, like boomer, Greatest Generation, World War II, like stoic guy that
Stoic white guy.
Stoic white guy that went and fought in the war, and it was like a good and just war, and he came back and was like a little bit fucked up, but he provided for his family and was stern but loving maybe, but not really loving in any sort of like overt explicit way.
He was a provider.
Yeah, right.
He was like a protector and provider.
Yeah, protector and provider, which is some of the stuff you're referencing, right? So we got that. And he had the sweater that Jessica's wearing, which was a little bit, honestly, a little bit flashy. For my grandpa, anyway. And then there was like the, in our kind of like generation, there was sort of like remember the joke about the like sensitive 90s man?
Who like to talk about their feelings.
Sensitive new age guys.
Who's into crystals, into healing.
Sensitive new age guys.
So I wanted to go to this thing from All About Love by Bell Hooks, which we just finished reading in a book club. Which I feel like we're going to come back to this chapter that's about men and women relationships a whole bunch, called Mutuality, in the middle of the book. And she's talking about like the feminist cultural revolution. This book is written in 2000, so she's sort of referencing that 90s shift. And she's like, this new generation of American men had experienced the feminist cultural revolution. They were more than happy when feminist thinkers told them that they did not need to be macho men. But the only alternative to not turning into a conventional macho man was to not become a man at all, to remain a boy. They could just find women to care for them in the same way that their moms had. So she's like ripping into these guys who are like,
yikes.
Yeah, it's fucking hard. That chapter is a harsh fucking toke, man. It's like, yeah, ouch. And so, yeah, I don't know. Do you guys feel like that's a valid complaint? That men took the permission to not be that traditional American archetype, masculine archetype that I was just talking about, and responded to it with kind of like nothing, kind of like not showing up. I think that's part of the complaint, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's hard, like when you don't have a good model, right? To just, how do you?
Or you have an anti-model.
Right? You have
almost.
you know what not to do, but what do I do? I mean, I personally have struggled with that and all kinds of things in my life. So I think that's really a relatable challenge, right? To not be able to figure that out.
I think also from a like socioeconomic perspective, the provider role was actively kind of, I don't want to say compromised, but challenged by what happened post World War II as well, which was more women entering the workforce slowly over time and gaining some kind of economic autonomy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I do think that like role has had an impact on what it means to be a man in the traditional sense, because provider was such an essential part of that.
Yeah.
And that changed so dramatically over the course of a generation.
Right.
Too.
Yeah, I would maybe quibble with your timeline a little bit, because I think the like post World War II period was like the peak of the man provider role, and partly enabled by social welfare programs, but whatever.
Well, allow me to quibble back. That during World War II...
Don't you back quibble to me, woman.
I will back quibble whenever and however I want. During World War II, women were asked to enter the workforce because men were at war.
Yeah.
And so what I had been taught was that women got the experience of being in the workforce and earning their own paychecks, essentially. When men came back, there was like a cultural backlash that kind of tried to force them into domestic roles and out of like factory work, for example, so that men could come back to having jobs. But that like, they never really put that back in the box successfully.
And then that just built over many decades. And like, suffice to say, like in the 90s, and especially the early 2000s, and maybe like the like millennial, like 2008 financial crisis being like kind of probably the kind of like peak of that, where the bottom really fell out of like male economic supremacy in this country with like, if you look at like college attendance, right? Like that's about when more women started going to college than men. And, you know, certainly like, it's not like there was suddenly gender equity or things like that in terms of pay, but I do feel like it sort of reached a point where that's the generation where people started saying like, what is wrong with these boys? They're not, you know, or these men, you know, what Bell Hooks is saying, like,
they're not like maturing into like adult male roles as we've seen them and understood them. I think also we have to talk about reproductive rights, because I think the intersection of economic autonomy for women, and maybe definitely some women more than others, alongside like the pill and the rise of like access to abortions, means that women were just less subjugated by male power, and they could make decisions that allowed them to have some more control over their lives, and they weren't as dependent.
So that's like the feminist cultural revolution that we're sort of talking about. And then, I mean, it is, you can definitely like point to Trump and the MAGA movement as a direct response to that, right? And
Absolutely.
It's like, you can't get a factory job and raise a family as a single, you know, a man working as the sole breadwinner, you know, in a working class profession in the Rust Belt or whatever.
Right.
And like, I don't know how much this is actually true. It's probably kind of bullshit, but that's certainly like the presentation that like, that's what happened. And that's all why all these people went fascy or whatever. Like, it seems like a solid grievance that, to be fair, we were talking about at the WTO protests in 1999, but it took everyone else 17 years to catch up and turn it into a masculine fascist movement.
And you have to name the tech boom in this too, and the idea that like the coastal elite, right?
Yeah.
We're still able to have like this sort of gender imparity in the like economic scene. And I don't really know what to say about that, but it is worth saying that like on the coasts and in cities that are completely dominated by tech, like men here with like a certain level of access and education, and it is, you know, that has to be in the mix, do have well-paying jobs, and they do tend to pay more than women.
Yeah, and I guess it's interesting to think about
so
how,
that's weird.
Like in our, you know, direct environment or subculture community, it's notable that there are some, it's almost like everybody working outside of tech, especially in like people who do sort of like helping, caring professions. It's not uncommon for there to be a woman who is making most of the money and the man who is not. And like that shift has definitely taken place, but it's probably more common. We probably know more couples, like cis het couples, where the man has a tech job and you don't really see him very much probably. And then, you know, the woman is either not working or like marginally working and is like focused on the family a lot more. So it's not like any of that has just disappeared. It's like you notice it more when it's inverted, maybe.
Yeah. And we just like, you know, gender and gender archetypes and how they intersect with race and class and history are so nuanced and complex that we're not going to be able to like put into place all of the relevant pieces when we talk about this. But I appreciate that you're just identifying, like, look, there is a writ large masculine archetype that our grandfathers were a part of, our fathers, and then, you know, your generation of men were kind of rebelling against. And now we're looking at what exists in the wake of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think this takes me back to your question that I was struggling to answer up top. You know, some of those whys is like the reactionary evasion of those stereotypes means that, like, you know, I could certainly, speaking for myself, like think a lot about like being careful taking up too much space, because there's a stereotype of men just like talking too much and dominating, right? And that shows up in like the way that like happens in schools, right? There's like studies about boys answering more in schools and girls doing much better in all girls school environments because they have more space because they're not being dominated by the boys, right? The stereotype about being like incurious. So like, I find myself like really thinking about like, okay, how can I stop and not talk about myself and ask questions and like be curious about the other person's experience more, or like being in touch with emotions, and like trying to like ask yourself like, what am I feeling and how is this influencing the way that I'm behaving? Seems obvious, kind of, but I don't think that's something that like you can take for granted when you're talking to somebody, especially a man. Like I think we kick this around a fair amount that like men will sometimes frame their feeling as an objective truth, given their like, and sometimes are in the position of power to do that. And that's like your shitty man boss is when you're complaining about him. That's often what you're complaining about, right? Like he feels some way. His ego is hurt by like the good work that you're doing, and so, but he's going to turn that into like, he doesn't know that he feels that way even, and so he's going to like turn that into some sort of like organizational directive.
Yeah. So bringing this back to what Bell Hooks is saying, would you read that passage again?
Maybe. I got another one too, but she's like saying they're man babies. She's calling us man babies. They're more than happy when they're told not to need to be macho, but the only alternative was to not become a man at all, but to remain a boy. And she goes on to talk about like in her individual relationships that she's sort of referencing here, that she like gets in relationships with men like this, and then at some point they like take this turn. And I feel like maybe this is like specific to the black male experience, maybe, but I don't know. She's not saying that specifically, but they take this turn where they're like just get pushed by patriarchy, pushed into a masculine role, and then they kind of become, they kill the sensitive parts of themselves and become like really abrasive, sexist assholes, kind of.
And I think she's making the argument they especially will do that in their relationships with women,
right,
and in their households.
Yeah, and they'll work to like preserve the power there, and reject love. This isn't all about love. So later on, she says like that they still see love as a woman's issue. To them, as a relationship is about finding someone to take care of their needs.
Yes, that was the piece that I wanted to come back to, which I think maybe will dovetail us back into talking about activism, collective spaces, and polyamory. Is that piece of masculinity that just sort of assumes that if, oh my gosh, am I going to say this the right way? Don't hold me to it. If they are not going to be toxic and in positions of authority and leadership, right? That they can't and won't show up to the collective, but they will still expect that women will care for them emotionally, and even sort of tangibly.
Yeah, and maybe just like won't do the traditional power interchange, or the traditional trade-off is broken. They're not the provider, the provider of resources and like protection, and but they still want to be the receiver of care, right? Like my grandpa came home every day from his job as a school teacher, driver's ed instructor, like still in a kind of caring profession, and expected there to be like a cold beer and some chips waiting for him, and to be able to sit in his recliner and disassociate, right? And for the house to be clean and for all of this care to be done. And the trade-off was that he made money. And he probably just felt like he could be like, shut the fuck up, leave me alone, give me my dues, because I did my part.
And I will say that at the end of her life, your grandmother had a lot to say about how emotionally uncared for she felt in that relationship.
Yeah, I'm in no way am I
Just
saying
saying.
this is a great perfect system,
Yeah.
but I am saying like what happens when you take away the protection and providing part, and then you just still want the care part. And like I could see why Bell Hooks and other women are like frustrated by that, to say the least, because they're like, what am I getting?
Yeah.
in return for this. And what is masculinity in this context? And this was making me think a little bit about our past guest, Eric Fitzmedrud, a couple of seasons ago. One of the things that he talked about in his book, which is called Better Man, he talks about like the need for men to be able to like identify positive masculine values and feel like they're the value in masculinity. And that to me like was very powerful when I heard that, or like a light bulb went off, because it was like, oh yeah, if you're just like know that you're a man and you're masculine and you just feel like everything about that kind of everybody's sick of it and it kind of sucks, then, you know, it leaves you just kind of listless, right? Or like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to be? So it's very important to like enumerate what are the positive values that we can associate with masculinity. And like a couple of years ago, I was doing this like queer men's group, and I asked this question to a group of probably like 10 or 12 men, and it was like crickets. Like nobody really, it was very hard to get men talking about like what they thought the positive attributes of masculinity were. So I appreciate you bringing it up in this context of like, you know, sort of some of these new archetypes, and like maybe we can point to what it is.
So hungry for it. And clearly other people are too, you know? And so actually I wanted to ask you, Jessica, you know, we're the she, they contingent, or the they, she contingent. And so I say that, you know, as a queer woman, I'm genderqueer. That's also my sexual orientation. So I'm not embodying femininity and female archetypes in the most traditional way. And in some ways, like, do feel in touch and a kinship towards masculinity. Mm-hmm. I thought it might be interesting for you and I to talk a little bit about, like, what are the positive masculine attributes that we feel in ourselves? You know, if we were, like, getting it out of the cis male body, to kind of like maybe depoliticize it a little bit,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, geez. I mean, there's so much to talk about. I don't even know where to start.
This is where I'm like, I asked you a question that I've been thinking about for like 5 days.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, what? You don't have a 3-paragraph response? I would say for me, being a protector is a huge, huge piece of that. And I'm not saying that that is like exclusive to masculinity. Obviously, being a protector is like part of the a female archetype as well. So I kind of like feel it in both parts of my gender expression. But I think my willingness to like put my body on the line and like be very like sort of physically protective feels like part of my like masculine expression. Again, I don't want to say that that's like specific to that archetype, but when Renee Good was killed, I felt like such a strong identification with her and the way she like, you know, and she's a queer woman. She was presenting as like a mask queer femme. Mask queer femme. Yeah, that's a thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a thing. That's what I am. And just like the way that she was putting her body and her car between someone who was vulnerable and this like toxic man, that felt like there was something in that for me that was really ignited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's really powerful.
I'll say one other thing, because it is hard. It's hard to talk about positive masculine values. Mm-hmm. And I think like identifying that that's hard is part of what we should be talking about right now. Yeah. It might be because we just want to be free of the binary entirely. And we just want to like be able to express all of these qualities and not ascribe them to a gender. And I appreciate that. And I also think we're still living in a world where like we have to engage with this in some kind of transparent and proactive way.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like the problem that you're sort of identifying is that like if nobody owns the masculine part of the binary, or we don't like know what it is, like obviously, yes, putting everything into a binary is a problem, but the reason masculinity and femininity exist like it's valid, right?
Yeah.
And like again, as always, like trans and non-binary people like show us the way on this a little
Yes,
bit. Like
absolutely.
a person who's, you know, assigned female at birth and then like moves into a masculine, like a male identity, they're seeing things in masculinity that they really like and want to associate with. And, you know, so clearly it's not just like made up, and that's not just like a delusion of filling some space
And
that doesn't need to be filled.
There's
you
a
know?
political problem here. And it's like we evade the political problem
Yeah.
over and over again. So let me put it to you like this. What if I knew small armies of non-binary people and femmes who are like, okay, then we'll engage in the ethical violence. We'll put our bodies on the line. We'll be the protectors. But that means like the mask folks, right? And the cis dudes, we need you to take care of the kids. And we need you to make the food. And we need you to care for people's like trauma when this happens. I don't see men jumping into that role, like the men who are like, oh, I don't want to be a toxic dude, so I'm not going to like go fight a cop. I don't want to be a toxic dude, so I'm not going to carry a gun to defend immigrants in my neighborhood. I don't want to be a toxic dude, so I'm not going to like say too much at an organizing meeting / ever go. But I'm also not here to provide any of the kind of like then more feminine nurturing to the women or non-binary folks who do want to do those things. Because the fact of the matter is all that shit has to get done. And the answer to being uncomfortable with masculinity can't be that women and femmes and non-binary people just do all of it. So that's the political problem. And I don't actually care how people want to engage with it, but I want to just be like, logistically, this is a fucking problem.
Yeah. Well, and
Going to a sex party is not enough. For the collective. Do better. You said I could come back to this at the end of the episode, but I came back to it now.
yeah. Well, you're here. Come back a little further.
Is it time for a bathroom break
What?
again?
No. What is it about that bothers you? So, I mean, you've like not what is about all of that. What is it about the sex party part? Because let's talk about how this like shows up in polyamory, because it's come up a couple of times. Like
That's right.
That was what I was saying. You should come back to.
This is a podcast about polyamory.
Yeah. For angry people.
For anybody, for very angry femmes. All right. Yeah. I think that part of what bothers me about that is that I do see men are capable of being motivated and motivated around sexual desire and their interest in emotional engagement from women. So it's not a pure lack of motivation. You know, it's not like they can't muster themselves to do anything or in a realm where they might be critiqued, because they are certainly being critiqued in those realms culturally right now too, but they seem willing to take the risks. So I think that's where there's like a hypocrisy that bothers me, you know, and I don't want to police people's behavior, and I don't want to be a feminist killjoy.
You don't?
I do, actually.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. But I do want to point these things out. And the reason why I want to point them out is not just because I am mad and also tired, mad and tired, but because I'm hopeful. And because I love men, and because I really want them to be shoulder to shoulder with me in these critical moments. It's not like I want retribution. It's not like I want reparations. I do want reparations for Black people in America. But I want men to be here. I feel like I need them. You know, I need them personally. We need them collectively. I need their fucking labor. I need their money. We need them. And it's frustrating to me that I don't know how to get them here. But they are able to show this kind of motivation in these other spaces, often poly spaces. Yeah.
Right. And that's like, you know, liberal progressive men, right? soy boys. As soy boys over here. And then on the like broader, in the broader political sphere, like that is all gender imbalanced, right? And like if you were like talking about the collective, like where are all the men? They're in fucking ICE, right? And you know they're voting Republican. And then obviously like there are very, very visible hyper feminized like spokespeople for the Trump administration or whatever. But like they're, you know, everybody's seeing like the polls, like, you know, women are more progressive, men are more conservative. And so like all of that stuff is playing out in that, like that's one answer to where they are. But I think you're asking a question of like, you're not really asking about that.
No, I'm asking like, where are my anti-fascist men? Like,
right.
I'm asking like,
well, and then I think you're asking a question of
and
like,
how do they employ their masculinity and their identity around like working towards and for the collective and protecting the collective at moments like this? Mm-hmm. You evoked your grandfather. He was an anti-fascist, you know, his dad probably was too. And they were probably willing to put their bodies on the line for those ideas. They were willing to make sacrifices, you know, not to go back in time and like be MAGA about it. But I'm just saying like.
I mean, he operated a radio in Suriname during World War II. So I
okay,
think he was...
fine. But you get my point.
Yeah, I do. Well, okay, so you brought up this thing about ethical violence, and I think maybe that's a good entry point for digging into this. Because in that bygone MAGA archetype, part of the thing that holds it together is the sense of like violence being able to be expressed in a like righteous, justifiable way, like killing the fucking Nazis, right? And that is just like eroded over our lifetime and the previous generations. For anybody who's paying attention, you know, our like nationalism is like funneled through and co-ops a lot of masculinity, but it's not like justified. It's imperialist. It's unsuccessful in a lot of cases. So there's no, you know, there's not really any like easy thing to grab onto there that's like, oh, I want to go express violence. You know, I want to go overseas and kill some people for good, or like be violent for good in a protector role, right? And like it sounds sarcastic when I'm saying that, but like that's what everybody thought at some point, right? When our definition of masculinity came about.
Yeah.
And now, like, yeah, I'm completely fucking unfamiliar with that, right? I grew up with the sense that, you know, violence was always kind of bad. And even when I feel like ragey or pissed off, like I've kind of taught myself to try to like dissipate that and not engage with it, because like where is it usually going to be expressed for people of my demographic? Like towards my family.
Right.
Is mostly where it is, right? Or, you know, storming the Capitol on January 6th or whatever. It's like, so I think what you're saying is like, why hasn't this showed up? And like, I think that's a reason, but then it also kind of is. Like we were talking about Alex Preddy, the second Alex Preddy video that came out, which was, you know, the context maybe for him being murdered is that a few weeks prior to that, you see him like, rather than protecting people overtly, he's like chasing ICE away and like spitting on their car and kicking their taillight out in like a rage. Like there's no mistaking that he's being
aggressive,
an angry, aggressive man.
White man. Yeah.
And I'm certainly not trying to pass judgment on that.
No, I love it.
I think it's great.
Please do that.
It's great
Everybody
that
do that
showed
more.
up. But that's what you're
especially
asking
white
for.
People.
And I guess what I'm saying is that is confusing. And like, it's not like it's any more confusing for men than it is for women, maybe. But I think what you're finding is that men don't always like have the capacity to like navigate and know if they should show up for that and how, because of how confused the backstory is, you know?
I do. Yeah. I do. And I hear what you're saying, and I recognize it. And I think you're right. It is confusing messaging. Like, are you ever supposed to engage aggression? And since it has been used against vulnerable people so much, like male aggression has been used against vulnerable people so much, is there some way to do it that isn't toxic? Is there some way to do it that centers protection and vulnerability than those who are vulnerable, instead of, your own fragile feelings, or needs or ego?
Yeah.
I do hear that. Yeah.
I was thinking about this earlier today, that I was remembering that there used to be a thing, remember G.I. Joes? I was like pretty into G.I. Joes, partly because I had like an older friend whose dad was in the Marines and was like really into them. So I was like, oh, this is cool. And there was this thing where you could make your own like G.I. Joe profile. And part of it was like their personality profile. And you had to like pick what kind of G.I. Joe they were. And the personality profiles are like either like the leader who's in charge of the troop, or like the lone wolf guy, or like there was another one that was very appealing that was like basically the traumatized psychopath, where like something so bad happened to this guy that he put on a mask and now he just like mercilessly kills people, but for good. On the good side. And like that was it. Like that's the menu to choose from.
That's right.
So I'm not asking that like men should get a pass about this or anything, but like when you're asking the whys, it's like the whys is like this fucking context. Like the patriarchy is so shit.
Yeah. It just, I am not an expert on talking about like violence and power and ethical employment of violence, but I'll make this observation that we have grown up in a time where anything short of total capitulation to authority is seen as violent as well.
Right.
So a fucking brick through a window is violent. Refusing to move out of an intersection is violent. Throwing a water bottle at a cop is violent. Blowing a fucking whistle is violent. Kicking out someone's taillight is violent enough that you deserve to be shot in the back 10 times. Like, I just want to also say that, like, the era that we're living in, it's like the only people who are ever allowed to employ violence or aggression are somehow fucking psycho ICE cops and like the most toxic men you've ever met in your life. Like, that is disturbing to me. And I have feelings about it. I also want to say that I think being willing to draw out the violence of the state against people who have more physical privilege is a role that white men in particular can take on. And I think it is a role that white women can take on, but in kind of different ways, right? So that, when we're talking about violence, we're not just talking about like some uncontrollable rage that comes out and then you just like sock the nearest person in the face. It's like, it is also a tactic, and you can draw it out in the fascists. And then when people see a white man being hurt, or a white woman being hurt, there is a huge response. So I think that that's one of the ways that you can engage in like being a protector, and being brave. I also don't know what this has to do with polyamory. I'm sorry, you guys.
Well,
I'm all like, I don't give a shit about polyamory.
What?
I want everybody to spend less time thinking about polyamory and more time thinking about protecting people who are vulnerable. Not because I don't give a shit about polyamory, but because that is what the moment calls for.
I mean, you were making me want to sort of address this head on in a vulnerable, self-critical way, because it's certainly been true in the last like few months as all this stuff has been happening, that there have been times when I have not engaged very deeply with it, or not wanted to, because one, because of a feeling of hopelessness, but I think that's sort of universal. But two, because I was like caught in a backwater of self-analysis around like relationships and trying to heal my fucking inner child, and like
I think that's a really charming backwater. I like it there, just for the
well, but it's distracting
It
from
is distracting, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a kind of silly thing to be doing amidst like the march of fascism.
Jessica,
I don't know.
save us. Alex and I are just going to crawl under the table any minute now.
Yeah, well, I'm already there, so join me. But it's like so much of what y'all are talking about today is like we have to figure out how we can show up differently in all kinds of spaces, right? Whether it's fighting ICE in the streets or it's at these sex parties you're talking about, like doing that work that you're talking about is going to change the way that you're able to show up as a non-toxic protector, right?
Maybe.
I'm interested.
I
I'm
appreciate
curious.
that idea.
You don't think so?
I do, but I'm also just like, maybe it will be. I'm not sure enough that the one has that as much to do with the other as I'd like.
Huh.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried
yeah.
about too.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, in theory, the same thing that would make me like feel whole and confident and like transcend my jealousy and be secure in my masculinity to the extent that I could like go to a sex party and like have interactions with other men and my partners, that's the same thing that would make me understand like my masculine presentation in the political realm. But to Sarah's point, I might be much more likely to try to do the first one than the second one. Or I don't know that like they both, that the first one really needs to be the venue for doing that, I guess, you know?
I don't either.
I mean, and well, okay, so one other thought, I guess I want to see what you guys think about this is like when I think about the question of masculine qualities that I see in myself or want or what have you, like, it's also worth noting that some of the really toxic shit, like you describing your grandpa coming home at the end of a day and just getting to like sit down and have a cold beer and someone give him snacks, I'm like, that sounds really nice. How do I get that kind of
I know, same. I'm like, that's my, I'm going to add that to my list of genders.
Well, and if you were like,
right?
you know, put that in like this modern context and it's like self-care, you know, like grandpa had fucking beer time. He literally called it beer time. And he was like, you know, this is when I take care of myself. Like there's not actually anything necessarily wrong with that unless it's taking something from his spouse.
Right. It's like kind of the dehumanization of his spouse that she has to provide that.
That's what's so confusing.
You know?
Like that is why it's so confusing to engage with this stuff as somebody who's been socialized as a man, because like I just don't feel like it, you know, as much as you might be like everything is for you and everything is given to you, like that doesn't mean you don't feel shitty about it and about asking for, you know, like I had to work really hard just to be like, oh, it's okay for me to like have feelings because those feelings are not a burden on somebody else, or like take time to take care of myself because I don't always have to be like taking care of everything else, or like, you know, be present in the moment because I don't have to be like vigilant about what's going to happen in the future and like how I'm fucking up. And like all of those things aren't necessarily like about masculinity explicitly, but they're like,
they are about toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
They're about what toxic masculinity taught you.
Yeah.
About who you were allowed to be. Definitely. Right. I just want us to take turns.
Yeah.
I think like, you know,
Yeah.
I just want us to be able to take turns. I want us to be able to like, you know, what was it? Move like water.
Yeah.
Is that Bruce Lee?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they apply that to the protests, that we can support each other and center each other and take turns, and that there isn't this like battle for like care, or this battle for, you know, around labor, but that we can be on each other's side. and find common cause. And I think like in these moments of sort of like these revolutionary moments, and we've been living through a lot of them, just for the record, like the course of just the past 5 years, there's probably been, 5 recognizable collective revolutionary moments. And I think at each one, there is some part of me that's like, is this the one where men and women will be able to learn how to stand shoulder to shoulder and face this together? Or are we going to keep fighting each other? And that's like, if I was just being kind of like poetic and, getting into like the hopes and dreams part of me. That's maybe where it does touch on polyamory, though, is this is all very relational. And it's about like the quality of our relationships and how they get projected into the collective and vice versa. And I do think that polyamory creates the circumstances to be very relational and really identify your patterns and make conscious choices to do something different,
And give yourself more chances to do that.
And give yourself more chances to do something different. And I do think that benefits the collective, but I don't think that this happens by accident. I think we do have to bring intention to it. We do have to care about that connection.
So. And you can use polyamory to reinforce patriarchy, or you can use it to disrupt patriarchy.
You can use polyamory to reinforce disassociation and escapism in complex revolutionary moments, or you can use it to like connect to those complex revolutionary moments. But again, it won't happen by accident.
Yeah. And I think I wonder too a little bit if like, are you actually talking about polyamory or are you talking about queerness? And like, there's a lot of overlap and intersection between the two, obviously, but like, I cringed a minute ago when you talked about like, are we going to be able to like transcend this as men and women or whatever you said? Because like the readily available answer is no, because it's never happened in all of human fucking history, apparently. Like maybe that's like the way that history has been told, but like,
Oh, I disagree with that. I think that there are probably many examples in human history
I would hope that
white colonial history, but yes.
But I guess maybe to sort of finish that thought, it's because the mechanics of power are always working to reinforce our gender like positions and pit us against each other. And like the way that you would actually transcend that is everybody like giving up on those a little bit more. Right. And like becoming more queer and rejecting the gender binary in and of themselves, so we can actually see the pieces of masculine and feminine that we want to embody, and that it's not such a hard line of like working together. And I guess you can see that in some of the activist spaces that you're talking about, that they're like, it's kind of weird to say it out loud like this, but it's not predominantly feminine, it's predominantly AFAB.
And queer.
Yeah.
It's really fucking queer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It makes me think of something that I've been orienting around a fair amount in this particular revolutionary moment. A friend of ours from many years ago, we've lost touch, but you both remember Alma, an incredible thinker around these ideas. One of the first people who ever told me about bell hooks, actually. Alma...
Ahead of her time in our lives, bro.
Absolutely ahead of her time. 100%. Alma said once that the point of privilege is to spend it. So identifying where you have it and finding ways to spend it. If you care about like justice and equity and liberation, yours and other people's is that.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time in these moments. Like, where do I have privilege? A lot of race privilege, a lot of class privilege, right? A lot of positionality privilege. How can I spend it? Am I doing a perfect job of that? Absolutely not. But I think that's what I want to see among white cis men. Where do you have privilege? How can you give it away?
Yeah. Well,
give that shit away.
And I will tell you, the best experiences I have had in this revolutionary moment have been when I did that. And not to like toot my own little horn over here, but I've had the opportunity to do it sometimes, and it's, I won't say it's easy exactly, but it's available. and and like specifically spending masculine male privilege.
Yes,
like
yes.
It's there for the doing and the trying to do it. It is very hard to like identify when and how, but you get, the experiences I've had doing that were both like internally rewarding and externally rewarding. Like I've like gotten a lot of like appreciation for doing it.
People will go ahead and toot your horn for you.
And and I guess when I think about like the instances when I was able to do that, it was like a masculine act, like being like the other day I had to like the opportunity to be sort of like intimidating to a shitty reporter from a shitty news outlet who was sort of like coming to like harass some vulnerable activists, and like my like passing as a university professor and like presentation and size and all of that stuff made it easier for me to just like look him in the eyes and tell him to go fuck himself, basically. Like not in so many words, but like, that was a manny thing to do. That wasn't necessarily violent, but was like aggressive. It was kind of aggressive. And that's what Alex Preddy was doing too.
Yes.
And there are probably, hopefully, thousands of Alex Preddy types out there right now doing the same thing, and hopefully not getting shot for it. But like, it is a role for us.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. And there's something beautiful in stepping into that role and like finding a positive masculine archetype to embody and model.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think this has gone on long enough, and I'm going to take charge in a masculine way and say, hard stop now. Thank you guys for listening to Mistakes Were Made. You're great. We're great. Check us out more.
Invest in his cryptocurrency.
I'm dropping a Bitcoin.
He's got a great protein powder that I think y'all would be really into if you want to bulk up to fight those fascists.
Yeah.
Check out our Instagram handle.
I can't even do it for that.
But it was
Stay fucking thirsty, bros.
No, I hate it. Do the nice one now.
Okay, nice.
Okay, thank you for listening to Mistakes Were Made. It was a pleasure, as always, to have this conversation with you, Sarah, and with you, Jessica, and with all of you out there listening. We so appreciate your attention and engagement with these difficult topics.
Soy boy out. Thanks, everybody. Good to be with you. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Al.
Thank you.
Bye.